Well, that brings us to what I really want to do, which is rank our list. We like to do lists on the show of our top 5 what have yous and whatnots and what you call it. I think that's the official name of the segment.
How are you feeling? How's that Moderna?
I'm hanging in there, believe it or not.
Are you doing all right?
I feel like it's just adrenaline, and as soon as the light goes out, the light's gonna metaphorically go out as well.
Yeah, great. Okay.
So athletes complain a lot.
Yeah.
This is something we know. Aaron Rodgers complaining, LeBron James complaining. This is as I get older, I notice more and more that I'm an old man that like these damn athletes complaining. And I thought instead of doing what I do on the show a lot, which is complain about athletes complaining, what if we, because these are 2 instances with Aaron Rodgers and LeBron James that were kind of sort of on their side.
We see their point.
We see their point. What if we did our list, our top 5 times that athletes complained, and we supported them 100%.
I love
Whereas
it.
like you're not a spoiled rich millionaire athlete. Like shut the hell up. We weren't yelling shut up and dribble. We were
Right.
like no, continue to talk.
We were
You
like,
have my
stop
full support.
dribbling.
Yes.
Here's the
and
mic.
talk. Yes. We support your complaining 100%. So that's what we're gonna do. That's how we're gonna end the show, right?
Yes,
Our
but
top
before
5.
we get into that, I just
Okay.
want to say that while I was doing some research, because I felt like there were a bunch of times that I have been on athlete side, but I couldn't quite place it, and I wanted to be sure I wasn't missing the one that I was thinking of subconsciously. I came across an article on blogs.usafootball.com that the headline is 3 ways to deal with young athletes who complain. And I'm not going to read it.
Ground them. Take away their juice box after practice.
The first is seek to understand athletes who complain. 2, discuss options. 3, tune out repeat offenses. So it's basically like the boy who cried wolf, but in a blog post.
Number 3, draft a quarterback in the first round to replace them.
Right. Beautiful.
All right, so our top 5 athletes complaining where you were on their side. Charlotte,
Yep.
I will give you the floor. Number
right.
5 for you.
I'm starting with a curveball. Mine is Ayesha Curry. Ayesha Curry? How do you say her name?
Ayesha.
Ayesha
Yeah.
Curry versus the NBA. And this is because one of my favorite tweets of all time was when during the 2016, was it finals?
Yep, NBA Finals in
When
Cleveland.
for the first time Steph Curry was ejected because he lost his cool at an ump and he threw his mouth guard. His wife,
Hit a
Ayesha,
woman, right? Like hit a kind of Novak Djokovic situation where it was like he didn't mean to hit her, but like just threw it and like hit somebody.
Yeah, which is also gross because it's like spit.
Yeah.
I'd rather get hit by
Yeah.
tennis. Well, no, I wouldn't. But anyway, so she tweets. And this is a tweet I think about at least once a week, and I think I've said this before on the podcast. I've lost all respect. Sorry, this is absolutely rigged for money. ... or ratings. In not sure. It's supposed to be I'm not sure which. I won't be silent. Just saw it live. Sorry. Ayesha Curry on Twitter, and then she deleted it. And
Which is very ironic because she said I won't be silenced.
Which
and
is
deleted her tweet.
perfect. And then the dark part of the story is that she said that her dad was racially profiled and was almost arrested. So like she was like I was on edge basically, which I get, but I am on her side because so often, how many times have you been watching an NBA game and a ref makes a last second decision and you're like, Adam Silver, you're like, there it is. It's absolutely rigged for money. And so I just love that she tweeted it and I wish she hadn't deleted it.
Yeah, I don't think she was. I don't think there was any controversy here. I think the problem wasn't what Ayesha said; it was that she said it. It was like she tweeted it. Everyone's like, "Yeah, duh, Ayesha. Is this
Like,
the first season you've been watching the NBA?" Like, oh my god, what?
But the way she said it, it's poetry. I've lost all respect. Like you could do this as like spoken word. I've lost all respect. Sorry.
It's a great. I wish you wouldn't delete it because it's a great it's an evergreen thing. You could just quote tweet and add your own thoughts and be like, my reaction when Chipotle says they're out of carnitas or something.
Exactly. I've lost all respect.
I've lost all respect.
This is absolutely rigged for money.
Yeah. Which, like, again, I've made this point before on the show, and I think I blew your mind with it, which is that the NBA, it would be irresponsible of the NBA to not rig their league for money and ratings.
That was a recent take, and
I
you did blow my mind, and I loved it.
I think they are in a business. This is a business. This is not. They are not seeking to have a competitively fair enterprise.
This isn't youth sports.
No. They are trying to make money. They are trying to get ratings. That's all that matters to them, and that's all that ultimately should, if you're thinking of it ethically. Like that. I guess not ethically.
Wow. Well,
no.
We took a
Ethically would
little
be the
bit of a
word.
left turn there, but I liked where you
anyway.
were going with it.
Not ethically, but what am I saying? Like that's their fiscal
how
responsibility.
capitalism
certainly.
works.
Capitalism, yeah, the capitalism, baby.
I once had
The day Ayesha Curry learned about capitalism.
welcome. Anyway, so that's my first one.
That's a good one. I like that. That's a good start.
Thanks.
My number 5 is pretty recent. This is I want to do one recent one because Rodgers and LeBron, and it's just kind of the current iteration of athlete that we're thinking about complaining. Mine is Blake Snell and before the 2020 MLB season saying that he was not going to play if he was not paid. Like he was basically the reason this one has my attention is that because there are a lot of players that complain about this, Charlotte. So the backstory is that as we know, the pandemic was the problem to starting the baseball season. MLB seemed to have figured out the pandemic, but there was another hiccup that like delayed the whole season, which is that like trying to figure out what to do with the money. And then there was almost a situation where it was like, all right, we figured out like what the bubble, quote unquote, would look like, which is not really a bubble at all.
Right, that worked well. Justin Turner.
But yeah. That's actually exactly what Justin Turner did when he was interviewed. He's like, it's me. And he started coughing.
So happy to be here.
But they didn't figure out what to do with the money. Like, how are you going to prorate contracts, all that kind of stuff. The players were fine with prorating contracts. So instead of 162 games, take whatever fraction of the games we're playing, pay us that much money of that fraction of our salaries. The owners tried to not do that. What they tried to do was do like a revenue split because they were they were upset that there weren't going to be fans in the stands and they weren't going to make money from selling beer and hot dogs, I guess. And long story short, like that had never happened in MLB. So like the players were like, we don't do revenue split. This is a dangerous precedent.
Right.
You do that, you're going to have to introduce a salary cap. We don't believe in the salary cap because we know that it's not a real thing. We don't want the salary cap in MLB.
Because Mark Titus said it wasn't real.
So a lot of the players were against this. Ultimately, the players like quote unquote won. Like they got their prorated salaries. But the reason Blake Snell had my attention, I want to specifically call him out or not call him out, support him. Yeah, shout him out. Is that he made his statement on Twitch while playing a video game. And his quote was like the quote that got him in hot water was that he said, "Y'all got to understand, for me to take a pay cut is not happening because the risk is through the roof. It's a shorter season and less pay." And then this is the part that is exciting. "Bro, I've got to get my money. I'm not playing unless I get mine. That's just the way it is for me. I'm sorry if you guys think differently, but if the risk is higher and the amount of money I'm making is way lower, why would I think I'm doing that? I'm sorry." And that was his quote.
Like, have you ever heard more sound logic in your life?
It's so good. But
haven't.
I think like the establishment, if you want to call them that, the old heads, the old school, the sports writers, the uncles that just sit on the sofa and complain about the athletes complaining, saw this man say, "Bro, I've got to get my money. I'm not playing unless I get mine." And it was like, I hate that guy.
Right.
That guy
They were like,
sucks.
he is the antithesis of baseball.
Yeah. Where's the love of the game? Where's all that? But I support Blake Snell because I think in general you should always support players versus owners when it comes to money, because like you think the player, you're like, why are these millionaires complaining? And it's like, well, because the billionaires are complaining. So like,
and it's wild
I
that
think
fans often side with the owners as though they think that because America is so fair, there's a chance in hell that they'll pull themselves up by their bootstraps and become the next
one day,
Jerry Jones.
the billionaire. I'm gonna be when I'm a billionaire, I want to be able to
like not to get political, but I'm like, I would settle for universal health care because I'm never gonna get there. So like, I'm with Blake Snell. That's also so good because of what happened that season. Yeah.
Ultimately, in the end, this is the ultimate irony.
Yeah.
Is that Cash did him in.
Oh!
Kevin Cash pulls him. He was so concerned with Cash, and Cash got revenge by pulling him in Game 6 of the World Series.
When he was dealing. That's one of the... I'm like upset at how smart that is. I'm like upset about that. Also, can I just say really quickly, this has nothing to do with anything, but one of my best friends is on a road trip with her dad right now, and they called me from the car, and they were talking about her brother who is balding, but still has sort of like the mentality that he is long flow. And her dad called it. He was like, "You've got a psychic mullet." And he was like, it might not be there, but like, it's like psychically you have the mullet mentality. Like it was this psychic.
You see it in your mind.
And that's one of the greatest things I'd ever heard of. I was like, I'm upset at how smart that is. And I just needed somebody to hear it. This guy was also lived on the same floor as Chris Berman in college, which I just think we got to get this.
Get this guy on the show.
This guy's amazing. We got to get this guy on the show.
Sorry,
anyway.
Aaron Rodgers, you've been bumped. We're having.
Yeah, we got Clay Deutsch. Shout out Clay. Shout out Juge. Okay, my fourth. That's a great one. My fourth is a baseball one. Is Ian Kinsler versus the Rangers. Do you remember this one?
I don't remember this one.
I had forgotten about it. But so in 2012, in December, the Rangers deal Michael Young, who was one of Kinsler's best friends and a leader in the clubhouse. And the Rangers, in the 8 years that Kinsler ended up being there, had gone from nothing to pretty serious contenders. I believe they won a World Series. I might be butchering that. But so basically, they deal as best friend.
No, the Rangers never won the World Series, by the way. They won the pennant. And
they won the pennant.
They had a guy on third base. Like, it's a very it's never mind.
That's one of the things that they haven't won.
In fact, the Rangers have been the closest to winning a World Series. They were literally 90 feet away from winning a World Series, and they choked it away. And it's a very sore subject for Rangers fans. So the reason I'm bringing this up is
sorry to Rangers fans.
Yes, is to acknowledge
like
Rangers fans. Yes,
imagine
you said
a Rangers
that. They were
fan
like,
listening to that. Right. Wow, sorry. That was you guys just caught a stray, and I apologize. Yeah. They made it to the World Series. Yeah. Kinsler's there, whatever. So they deal as best friend. And then the front office wants him to move from second base to first base because they've got this new guy, Jurickson Profar, just wild name. And Kinsler's like, no. And the quote, he says, I was a 17th round pick. There was zero coddling. I had to put myself on the prospect map. In other words, like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So then Texas sends Kinsler to the Tigers for Prince Fielder. After all this time with the franchise, he was one of their best players for a long time. He had all these stats that I'm not going to list. And Kinsler says, this is where I love. He says, so John Daniels, who was the president or something. I'm kind of butchering this, but like you guys get where I'm going with it. Kinsler says, I hope they go 0-162. I got friends and I love my friends, but I hope they lose their ass. And then he goes, John Daniels is a sleazeball. And then he ends up winning a World Series with the Red Sox. So I love this guy. And that's why I like Ian Kinsler versus Ray, because he was basically like, you guys are just like screwing me over again and again, and then he's just like goes scorched earth, and he's like, I hope you lose every single game you play.
Is there an I don't know enough about the specifics. I'll trust your judgment.
Clearly, I barely do, but like you get where I'm going with it.
But in general, is there a level that someone can reach where their complaining gets so intense and they go so scorched earth that you reach a point where you're like, you're kind of in the wrong, but I love how passionate you are about this, so now I'm on your side.
Totally.
Is that possible for you?
And only in athletes, like when there's really like it doesn't matter what they're complaining about, like nothing, there's no harm, no foul really, except like their job or their money, and they just are so much like, you can all go to hell, that you're like, I'm here for it. Like, get the popcorn, I'm here for it. So that's why I love that he says John Daniels is a sleazeball.
I also love that he was trying to make a case for like why he shouldn't be traded, and he was actually making the case for why they shouldn't value him, which is like, listen guys, I was a 17th round pick, and they're like, yeah, we know, that's why we don't have to invest in it. Right. Like, yeah, we got guys who are spending a lot of money on.
He's doing a Tom Brady. He's like,
I know. It just
I get, you're right.
Yeah. Number 4 on my list, this is from a few seasons ago. Eric Bledsoe was on the Phoenix Suns, and he fires off a tweet 3 games into the season after losing by 42 points to the Los Angeles Clippers. After so the Suns start 0-3. They have They have 2 losses. Of the 2 of those 3 losses were by 40 or more points, and they fire Earl Watson, who is the head coach, 3 games into the season. And when they fire Earl Watson, Eric Bledsoe fires off a tweet that reads, quote, I don't want to be here. That's all it says. I don't want to be here. He doesn't quote tweet a story about the Suns. He doesn't tag anybody. He just says, I don't want to be here. And naturally, as people do, they say this must be the man's an NBA player. What else could he possibly be tweeting about? But the disaster that is the Phoenix Suns right now, 0-3. He wants out. He wants out of Phoenix. There's no secret here. Eric Bledsoe's story is that he was not commenting on the Suns starting 0-3 and firing their head coach. He was at a salon with his girlfriend, his wife, his fiance, I don't know, with a significant other woman. He was at a salon and he just fired off a tweet that said, I don't want to be here. And this has my full support because as a man who has been dragged many places by a woman that I do not want to be, and I just have to sit there, at the mall, at the salon, at the what have yous and whatnots and whatchamacallits.
Yeah, and the thingamabobs.
And the thingamabobs. I empathize with this man. I think he was wrongfully accused. I think it was just a coincidence that the Suns were absolute garbage and that he actually kind of hinted at wanting to be traded anyway in other ways. And I think he was well within his rights to say, I don't want to be at the salon anymore. And I think he was wrongfully attacked for it. So there you go.
I don't have anything to add except that's one of the best things you've ever said on this podcast. I also just love Eric Bledsoe. Who'd he get in the fight with where the guy called him Drew Bledsoe? One of the Celtics. I can't remember who it was, but he was like, I'm not worried about Drew Bledsoe.
That's right. I got an Eric Bledsoe fight. I gotta look that up. Go ahead. Sorry.
It was Terry Rozier.
Terry Rozier. That's right.
Yeah, he was like, okay, Drew Bledsoe, and Eric was like, well, that's a pretty good burn. My third is kind of controversial, and you'll see why when I say it, but it's Tom Brady versus the Pats. Because I think after last season, I have to side with Tom Brady because the Patriots first of all, he never really complained. But he was clearly still good enough to play. The Patriots kind of let the roster deteriorate around him. They didn't want to pick up his contract, and so he was like, okay. And then there have been some digs he said over the course of his time with Tampa where he was basically like, who knew football could be fun? And it's like, that's true. That's really true. So like, and then he won a Super Bowl, and it's like, I have zero legs to stand on, right? It's like, okay, so I'm on Tom Brady's side.
How did the Patriots do in the playoffs?
Mark,
I was just trying to remember.
Are you actually asking me? They didn't make him.
Oh, they didn't. That's right.
I thought you were being a dick. You were.
Was I?
I'm not falling for this again. You are not. Gullible is not written on the ceiling.
Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl and the Patriots do not make the playoffs. I think he wins the breakup no matter what happens from here.
Definitely.
So I think by virtue, although that is a little faulty logic, isn't it? That I don't know, just because you does that mean you were right retroactively?
No, because here's the thing. What happened because of the people who were there. You can't say it was one person's fault or one person's doing that the Pats were that good for that long. What you can say is that Tom Brady then went to a team that had the pieces, and maybe he had such leadership skill at that time where he was just like re-energized. Like, you can't... Like, I'm not gonna do this. We'll save this for like a stupid NFL preview show. But do you know what I mean?
If you're the Patriots and Tom Brady, his contract has expired, and there's discussions about whether or not you move on, you were steadfast in your belief even back then that you do not let Tom Brady wear another uniform ever again. Right?
No.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. At the time, no. At the time,
you weren't.
No, at the time I was like, look. He looked really bad the last season.
Oh, no.
I get it.
Charlotte.
We've got to rebuild at some point. But at the same time, I'm really sad. But, I didn't really know how to feel. And I was like, okay. And then this happened. And I was like, I and the Patriots are absolute morons. And so I'm like, okay, Tom, you win. And it was like the ultimate. I'm someone who believes, if someone comes at me on Twitter, I usually don't respond. Because I think that the most powerful way to give them the middle finger is just to keep succeeding and pretend that you never saw what they said. It's like bullies on a schoolyard, and I think that's what Tom did. I think he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna be pretty nice about this, but then I'm gonna win the Super Bowl.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. Number 3 on my list, I'll make this one quick, is John McEnroe when he yelled at the chair umpire in 1981 at Wimbledon when he yelled, "You cannot be serious," which has become like the thing. I actually knew this about John. Did I say John McIntyre or John McEnroe?
No, you said
What
John
did I say?
McEnroe. You said McEnroe. That Moderna's kicking in.
The Moderna's kicking in. It really is. Because
we'll run through this rest of this list real quick.
I said John McEnroe, and I really thought I said Oh my God, it's
wow.
All right, so he yells, "You cannot be serious." We all know this. I was going to say, Charlotte, before I knew John McEnroe was great at tennis, I knew him as the tennis guy who yelled a lot and complained a lot. Like that was my. I obviously wasn't alive in 1981 when he did this, so like my memory of John McEnroe was like when he started popping up on TV and criticizing other people, and then like you start to hear stories about how he was a hothead and all that. I didn't know he was actually great at tennis. I just thought he was just like the Dennis Rodman, who actually was, I guess, great as well. But bad example. Dennis Rodman's in the Hall of Fame.
God, we gotta get through this.
But anyway, John McEnroe yelling, "You cannot be serious." There's a narrative around this, I guess, or like if you don't pay, like I always thought that he was just like just yelled, complained. This man wrote 2 autobiographies, Charlotte, where the titles of the books reference this incident. The first one was titled "You Cannot Be Serious." It was also titled, like they basically like re-released it and just changed the title to Serious.
Stop it, are you kidding?
And then he wrote another autobiography like 20 years later, 15 years later, something like that. That he titled "But Seriously." So like this man has made this incident his entire life to where you think that he's like laughing about it and saying like I was in the wrong. But if you go watch the actual shot in question, there is the reason he's losing his mind is because even in 1981 grainy ass footage that you can barely see anything, the ball hits the line and like the chalk explodes. Like you can see it in grainy footage that it explodes, and they call the ball out. McEnroe's like, it clearly hit the lot, like the chalk, like everyone in the crowd's like waving chalk out of their face because there's so much chalk in the air, and he loses his mind. So he has my support for that. All this time before I would put together this list, I thought John McEnroe was. I mean, he still like whines, and there's been so many other incidents of him whining where he was in the wrong. So it's not to say he doesn't have a temper or whatever, but like. All this time, this one famous incident with John McEnroe, I thought he was just being like a little wuss and a crybaby. And come to find out, he was absolutely right, and I would have lost my mind too. And by the way, speaking of like winning and shoving it in everyone's face and saying I was right all along, he won. He won that tournament. He won that match in straight sets, and then he goes on to win the 1981 Wimbledon title. So suck it, chair umpire, wherever you are.
To see it. That's such a good one. Also, John McEnroe recently narrated that Netflix show, Mindy Kaling's Netflix show, Never Have I Ever.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a good show, and it's hilarious that John McEnroe narrates it. And there's like a reason that he does. The plot comes around.
All right.
But I recommend it. Okay, my number 2 is Scottie Pippen versus Jerry Krause.
Yep.
I was like, this is one of the things that makes me most mad when I think about in sports. He was signed to the worst contract ever. And then Jerry Krause kept being like, I think we're going to trade you. And then he'd be like, psych, we're going to keep you. And then Scottie Pippen would be like, I'm putting up insane stats for you. And then Phil Jackson was like, but you know who's going to take the final shot? And then Scottie was like, ugh. And it was this whole thing. And I was totally on Scottie's side. And that's my 1 minute encapsulation of the Bulls dynasty.
I was totally on Scottie's side. I think that's fair. I think I remember watching The Last Dance. I forget all the specifics, but I remember thinking like Scottie was stupid. Not stupid, but like not Scottie. I mean, he like has agents. He has agents do this. He just kind of does whatever his agents tell him. I remember thinking like that was not a smart move. Like you kind of put yourself in this position, so I don't feel that bad. But then also.
But then they could have fixed it.
You could have fixed it. Like just because you can doesn't mean you should. Right. You know, like just because I don't know. Just because Jerry Krause is like, gotcha, I got you under this contract. It's like, or you could, not do that and
right. Like, what about keeping your players happy?
Faith. Yeah. Like, what about that part of it?
Little
all,
Aaron
Jerry?
Rodgers shades here.
Yes,
I don't know.
A little bit. That's all a good one. I like that one. I'm gonna stick with basketball for my number 2. It is the Allen Iverson practice rant.
Yeah.
When from 2001, 2002 season, when everyone knows it, where he says practice like 25 times or something in like a 2-minute span. We talking about practice. The story was basically Larry Brown. So in 2001, the Sixers win the East. They go to the finals. They beat the Lakers in Game 1. Then the Lakers win the next 4. But the famous picture of Allen Iverson stepping over to Ron Lue was from that final. Iverson was balling out. He wins MVP that year. Great run for the Sixers. The following season, they kind of suck. And there's turmoil and strife and whatever words the thesaurus will spit out. Between Larry Brown and Allen Iverson, and he says that he's not giving it his all in practice. So this comes to a head where he's doing a press conference, and Allen Iverson is in front of the media, and someone asks him like, Larry says you're not giving it all in practice, and Allen, in my mind, rightfully loses his mind because. What is lost? There are two things that are lost in this rant, Charlotte. Number one, Allen Iverson won the MVP in 2001. The following season, which is the season in question where he had to defend himself for his practice habits, he averaged more points, more rebounds, more assists, and more steals than he did the season he won the MVP. His stats had gone up. He had become a better player statistically the following season. So it's not like his production had dipped, which is why he was like, who gives a shit about what I'm doing in practice? I'm balling out in the games.
That's like playoffs?
And then I didn't know this, but he one of his friends had been murdered recently, and this is true. I know this feels like I swear to God, this is true. He had a friend that was murdered, and apparently like the murder trial had started like a few days before that press conference that he did. And so like he was like in a state of just like, he was in a state where like he did not want to deal with the bullshit.
Right. He was like, don't test me now.
And then a reporter asked him, was like, hey, Allen, do you think part of the problem with the team is you? And he's like, I'm averaging 32 points and like, and what you're doing in practice. And so that's why it's number 2, because I think the whole it's become a meme. It's become like, it is funny. And I will still like, cite it every so often. It's like it was a very funny rant. I'm not saying like we shouldn't laugh or like enjoy the rant for what it was,
but it's also very real.
But it's very real, and it was like I'm definitely on his side that like it is kind of bullshit to be like, hey man, you're not practicing, because like who cares? Who cares if you practice at all? If he literally does not even practice a second, he's still averaging 32 points a game.
Yeah, that's where you come up against like the garbage of like, well, this is how things should be done. It's like, well, what if it's working better a different way?
Yeah. Right.
Why, God forbid, we be better. Okay, my number 1 is Serena Williams versus Carlos Ramos. This was the 2018 U.S. Open where she got 3 violations. The first thing that happened was he was like, your coach was coaching you. Because she looked to the stands and her coach gave her a thumbs up, which to me, not coaching. Also, I think this is the stupidest rule in the world. Have you ever heard of a sport where your coach isn't allowed to coach you? Are you kidding me? That's like if Belichick's on the sideline, the refs are like, offensive penalty, coaching, Belichick. Like what?
I do love that when you think of coaches who would cheat, you think of Bill Belichick. That was great that came to mind immediately. God
damn it! No, it's just because that's
where your mind goes.
You're twisting my words.
That is ridiculous. Why?
Like that in and of itself, I think is so stupid. But first of all, I also believe her. I don't think she was being coached. So then, she gets upset about it, and then she gets she tells the ref, she's like, I wasn't coaching. And then basically it boils down to, he then gives her violations for abuse of her racket because she got upset and like hit her racket. And then for abuse of a ref because she said, you were a liar. You will never be on a court of mine as long as you live. When are you going to give me an apology? Say you're sorry. Okay. And then she goes, you stole a point from me. And I loved it because watching this, you're like, yeah, this guy is clearly being vindictive. And he said later, he was like, I thought it was time to send her a message. And you're like, what? In what world? And she, afterwards, she was like, look, I'm sorry, but like men have been way worse. Like, look at Djokovic, look at John
McEnroe.
Look at John McEnroe. Like, look at Kyrgios. Like, these guys all do this all the time. And like, they don't get 3 code like, it was clearly garbage. But it's also funny because I watched this in a bar. It was one of my good friend's birthdays, and his sister was there with me, and we were watching this live, and we were like livid on Serena's behalf, and he was like, I don't know, she's being kind of a baby about it, and we both like jumped down his throat. We were like, you don't understand what it's like to be a woman. Like,
have you ever thought that Serena Williams' complaints have been misplaced, or she's been in the
I don't
wrong?
think I've watched enough of her matches to know. Like, I'm sure there's been a time where I'd be like, that's probably not.
Okay.
But this was one that felt.
I'm just trying to understand like how big of a fangirl you are. You know, like how biased of a source is this? Do you have the ability to be like, Serena, you're wrong on this one? Do you think you?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's
yeah,
fair.
I think so.
That's
I
fine.
think so because it was like she played Naomi Osaka, who I also love, and when Naomi ended up winning, I wasn't like she won because Serena got flustered. Like, I think she would have won anyway.
Yeah.
And she won again when they faced off this year. So in that regard, like, I'm not an apologist, but I do think that this was one example where it was just like he escalated things. So, like, the job of a ref isn't to like become a part of the game the way that he did.
Right. Yeah. I in general, refs should not like. Yeah.
You don't want to be the story if you're the umpire or the ref.
That's a tough spot to be in because I understand like you want to have control over the game because like in your mind you're like this game is I am in charge of controlling this environment and like calming everyone down and whatever. So I can't let someone upstage me. I can't let a player have control over me because then now they're in control. And so you want to, but at the same time, you're absolutely right. When like the ref inserts themselves into and
the
is like,
fact
this is
that
my
it
time to
kicked
shine.
Off over like a coach giving a thumbs up, that to me is a little bit
that's
like
ridiculous.
If there were a bigger issue that started it, I'd be like, okay, everybody kind of lost their cool. But the fact that he called her on something that I think is so stupid and innocent in the first place.
I think the Serena quote was a little aggressive. The one you read where it was like,
I just loved
what'd you say?
it.
I'll kill your family? Was that it? Was that what he said?
He said I kill Babe Ruth's right. Babe Ruth's right. No, because I think that I would have, maybe I just really identify with this because like there have been times where people have insinuated that I have, been dishonest in some way when I know that I haven't. I have just like absolutely lost my mind.
Yeah.
So I think that that's why I'm like, yes, I get this and I'm on your side.
You'll never work this again. Like what you say, you'll never work my matches. You'll never
be on a court of mine as long as you live.
Yeah.
Which probably is true.
Those insults, I don't know how much power are behind them. I mean, Serena carries a lot of power, I imagine, but being told you're never going to work anything.
But it was only hers. He's still, he can ref whatever else.
I'm saying that's like a very effective insult.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
like that work. Like if, I don't know. So I could go to some small town in Nebraska and if like a guy pulled up and was like, you'll never work in this town, kid, or something. I'd be like, what? Never?
You'd be like, oh my God, that's like any ultimatum is like really scary.
and the guy has no power and like couldn't do anything about it anyway, but I believe him. Just like hearing those words would freak me out. So good on her. All right. I'm glad you support it.
Thanks.
My number one is Steve Johnson, aka Stevie Johnson, aka Steven Johnson. There's a lot of iterations. I believe he's going by Steve at the time. Wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills in 2010. They're playing in week 10, maybe ish.
Okay.
I guess it'd be week 10.
Week Moderna, maybe.
They are playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. The game is in overtime. Ryan Fitzpatrick throws a perfect pass to Steve Johnson in the end zone. It hits him in the chest and the hands at the same time. He drops the ball. If he catches the ball, per NFL rules, that would be a win, an automatic win because it is overtime and you've scored a touchdown. He drops the ball. The Steelers then get the ball back and they march down and score a touchdown or kick a field goal and win the game. So Steve Johnson goes to Twitter and tweets the following in all caps, Charlotte, I praise you 24/7 with 1,000 exclamation points. And this is how you do me with 1,000 exclamation points. You expect me to learn from this? How? I'll never forget this ever. Thanks though. So Steve Johnson was blaming God for dropping the touchdown pass and he has my full support because I do think like he makes a strong argument that like he is going to church, he's praising God, he is praying before these games.
He is walking the walk.
We talk about God-given talent with all these athletes all the time, and God gave him a lot of talent, enough talent to get to the NFL, but not enough talent to catch that pass. And that is a mind and mind effing, if you will. If I
Yeah.
was Steve Johnson, I'd be like, I was blessed with so much talent and yet not enough talent. This is so weird. What have you done to me? I'll never forget this ever.
It's also, he wasn't like, it wasn't like he was saying it as an excuse. He wasn't like saying, well, you know, God made me drop the ball, so what can you do? He was like, God screwed me over. Like he's as upset about it as the fans are. He's like, but it's this guy's fault. The big man upstairs had a game plan and I wasn't favorable for us, but like, what can you do? Anytime someone blames God, it's really hard to argue with them because like, where do you start?
Yeah, exactly. Like the burden of proof falls on you to prove that God didn't.
Right.
And
that's impossible.
I don't. Yeah. So I guess good on you, Steve John. Like everyone's it's so good to get it. Like everyone's yelling at Steve John. I just picture like a mob yelling at Steve Johnson, and then he just like turns his back to the mob and slowly backs up, and then now he's like in them, and then they're all just yelling at nobody.
Right. And he's like, see,
he's like, yo, drop the ball. Why did you drop it? And then he just keeps backing up, and then he disappears, and then no one ever remembers. So.
And then everyone's just yelling at the air, and here we are, kind of like we do on this podcast.
I am gonna go lay down.
Go lay down, Mark. Thank you for your service. You've been a real trooper. Oh man! All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Mark's literally lying down. Bye.
Hey pals, thanks for watching the People Sports Podcast YouTube channel. For more of mine and Mark's very weird rabbit holes, stick around, watch more. You can subscribe, smash that subscribe button. You know you want to. We're going to give you all the weird stuff we possibly can.